Hi everybody, Brittany here, and I'm shooting this video in response to Vamissel's video where he demonstrates how to hunt a gladiator in Shinewood Forest. However, I'm going to demonstrate how to hunt an archer for those that might be interested. To do that, I'm going to take us to Nobis Ruins, because Nobis Ruins is a pretty good hunting ground for casters like archers to hunt. As you guys can see, I use my insect cloak to turn myself into a frog. This is an item I received from a quarterly event, and it really speeds up the walking process. Since it's going to take me a little while to get there, I'll go ahead and explain that Nobis Ruins can be accessed by those that have reached level 99. However, just being level 99 doesn't really give one the hit points enough to stay alive here, especially since many of the creatures hit with light-based attacks from afar. So it's recommended that someone is at least a master, and maybe even a Medenian path before they enter this place. To get to the Nobis Ruins, you have to first go to Oran Island, which is just a town, go all the way through the town to the back, which is about where I am now, and then go all the way through the Oran Jungle. Near the back, you'll find Nobis, which is kind of like a fort city, if you will. And to physically get in, you have to say, "Welcome, Aisling." On your way through the Oran Jungle, you'll see several creatures like scorpions, centipedes, pirates, maybe even some cherubs, but for the most part, people really don't hunt this area. You'll see the same type of creatures in several of the rooms in Nobis Ruins, but once again, these aren't the places people like to stop to hunt. Okay, and now that I'm inside, I'm going to go step in the middle of this little purple platform, and it'll send me closer to our destination. You'll see a lot of these purple platforms scattered throughout the ruins, but for the most part, none of them work. Okay, and now we're in the village, which is a safe area. And attached to it is where we will begin. Before I go too far, I'm going to hide a caster, and he'll come in handy later. Usually as a rogue I would hide through here to make sure none of the enemies attack me. However, for the sake of time, I'm going to stay in my frog form and kind of run through as fast as I can without getting damaged. An extra tidbit about rogues and archers is that they can resize their map to their liking using the page up and page down buttons. This is really handy when you walk through a place like Nobis, because Nobis is pretty much a giant maze. It can be extremely difficult to navigate unless you're very familiar with it. As far as the layout for Nobis goes, there are 3 large floors. We're on the first floor right now, and the first floor is kind of comprised of 3 branches. Each of these branches leads to an area where you can dig up bones. The bones are then taken upstairs to begin a chain of mini-bosses, and in turn these mini-bosses drop several items which you use to summon the Medusa Creant. As I'm running through the first and second floors, you'll probably notice a lot of these skeletons. For people with relatively decent hit points, they're not really much of a threat. This is because bastards can take them out pretty easily because of their low armor class. Casters such as bards and archers can also take them out pretty easily because they have darkness defense. However, up close they can be pretty nasty if you're wearing a light belt because they also have a darkness attack. Okay, and now I've finally made it to the second floor. This is the floor that you have to kill 2 mini-bosses on to make progress toward the Medusa Creant. You'll also see skeletons up here, but more often than not you'll see these beetlelics, which are these little orange things running around. You'll also see verdant lozgans. Beets and lozgans are a little bit harder to kill than skeletons because they have a higher armor class. However, they still do have darkness defense, so light-based attackers like bards and archers kill them pretty easily. We're getting close to the 3rd floor now, and unfortunately it looks like the enemies are getting a little bit bunched up. However, if you look down at my skill pane, you'll notice an eye icon, and you notice I use it a lot because it's something called Shadow Figure. It's a pure rogue skill that has no cooldown, and basically it allows you to jump over any creature you want to as many times as you want to. It's pretty sweet. Okay, and we finally made it to the 3rd and final floor. The only thing that makes the 3rd floor any different from the 2nd floor is that we no longer are going to see any skeletons. In their place, we're going to see these rooted tier things, which basically have the dark attack and dark defense just like skeletons do. They're a little bit harder to kill though. Since I want to show you guys the soloing capabilities of archers, I'm going to run to a place a little more private than right off the stairs here. These places in general are called rush rooms or mob rooms, either one of the two, and they're basically the rooms that lead up to the mini-boss summons of the Medusa Creant. For players that are new to Dark Ages, I'll explain that Archer is the final tier of the Rogue class. You can be rededicated from one class to Rogue and still become an Archer, but nevertheless you must be a Rogue. Like I mentioned before, my Archer is pure, meaning I didn't rededicate from another class before I became a Rogue. Whether you choose to be a pure rogue or a rededicated rogue, however, you need to be prepared to put a lot of tender love and care into your character. It takes a decent amount of work to make a good archer because it's pretty much imperative that you max all of their stats and get them good bases before they can deal out damage fast and effectively. It's also important to gain as many ability levels as possible as archers because our armor class doesn't really improve much until later in the game. In my opinion, the rogue class is so fun to play because there are so many things you can do. In general, the rogue class is pretty fun because you can do everything from hide and cloak yourself from creatures. You can also see other players that are hidden. You can read elements. You can bladesmith, tailor, and do other assorted things that other classes can't do all at once. From levels 1 to 99, rogues usually deal indirect damage with their traps. Once becoming a master and grandmaster, rogues usually still don't put out much physical damage. However, we do gain what's called Assassin Strike, which is a skill that allows us to do massive damage, probably more damage than any other skill in the game, to elemental creatures. Archers are often thought to be casters more than they are bashers because we pick up what's called Star Arrow. Star Arrow is our light-based attack spell that does pretty decent damage. You'll notice as I demonstrate how to hunt an archer that I use it quite a bit. It's like a little spark of white light. You guys have probably noticed by now that we've pretty much reached our destination. We're in the mob rooms now, and as you can see, they're much more open than the rest of Nobis. There are always creatures running around here, so it's a pretty good hunting spot. I'm going to run just a little bit farther in to make sure we're not bothered. As an extra tidbit about rogues, if you've been wondering what that sword-like animation around my character is, it's actually the Dark Ages invulnerability spell. Rogues don't normally receive this spell while they're leveling 1 to 99. However, once you get your 20th ability level, you can buy it as an item instead of a spell like priests and monks usually get. As an added bonus, pure rogues also receive a hiding trinket which will hide your entire group for a few minutes. We also receive a trinket called Nerve Stimulant which increases the party's hit. It has the potential to be pretty useful. Now that we've finally gotten to the place I want to start, you'll notice that I'll switch to my spell pane a lot. This is because from levels 1 to 99 I learned several traps, including my poison snare which I have to set for the enemies to walk through. Really the only bad thing about the snares is that you can't actually see them being cast, so you just have to watch for the animations above the creature's heads. In this case, since they're going to be poisoned, you'll see a green bubbly effect. The snares themselves take very little MP to cast, and as you can see there is no charge time for the traps. However, they will take a little time to take effect, so I'll end up running over to the summon room to wait a little while. Since this is only a demonstration, I'll just poison a few and be on my way. I'm bouncing around a lot as I poison these guys, but don't fear, the game isn't normally this laggy. It's most likely the combination of the frog form and this recording lagging me a lot. Okay, and now I'm done poisoning, so I'll just kind of run over a few rooms to the mini-boss summon room and chillax for a while. Since Nobis creatures have HP in the few 100,000 range, we'll have to wait approximately 40 to 50 minutes for their HP to get low. Okay, and now I've waited approximately 45 minutes, and now it's time for the part we've all been waiting for. Before I head out, I'll just give you a glance at all my gear. It's arguably not the best gear for hunting, but it's pretty decent. Now that it's time to kill, I'll make a point of keeping myself hidden until it's absolutely necessary that I become unhidden. This is because the Nobis AI is pretty basic. As long as I stay hidden, the creatures won't be able to see me. However, the second I become unhidden, they'll chase me until I'm either dead or I've left the map. This is true even if I try to re-hide myself. The creatures here are also known to act a little strange. Even though they usually aggro the first person they see, they'll often stop, get confused it seems like, and then re-aggro. So you have to be a little careful if you're hunting with a caster. Since Shadow Figure does a light amount of damage whether we're hidden or not, pure rogues really have the advantage when it comes to soloing. All we have to do is run up, simply jump over the creature, and somehow by some strange phenomenon we keep the aggro to ourselves and gain the experience. Other rogue paths have it a little bit tougher because they physically must come out of hide to do some kind of damage to the creatures. Gonna kill just a couple of more and then I'm gonna move on to hunting with the caster. Noticing that little spark now? That would be Star Arrow, and I'm really gonna light these guys up to get rid of them. Now that the poison creatures are cleared out, you'll notice that I'll start to drag the non-poison creatures until I can find a big clump of them. Once I get a decent amount of creatures together, I'll use my blinds to stop them in place. Ideally, I'll want to blind the creatures in kind of a line formation, though diamond is best. This is because Star Arrow is what is called a meow spell. That means if I point to the creature in the center of a diamond, then it'll hit basically every other creature around that center, as long as the creatures are within 2 or 3 steps. Hey, I knew I saw somebody stealing my gold. That's actually my caster friend that you guys remember seeing at the beginning of the video. You'll notice that his character looks a little bit dim, and that's because he's hidden. I just casted the rogue spell East KRU, so that's the only reason why we can see him. He'll be unhidden to help us out here in a second though. Usually I would pull a lot more than this, but the spawns on the 3rd floor in Nobis are pretty thin, so I'll just kind of settle for this. I'll get them all lined up here with my Great Blind Snare, and then my caster will unhide and start doing his job. Since I'm a pure rogue, there's not really much I can do to help the caster, but once he has everything spelled up so my Star Arrow does good damage, I'll start to kill him pretty quick. And that's all there is to it. You'll notice here as that creatures are dying that my caster gets up close and personal with a few of them, and that's because he's helping me out. You can also bounce Star Arrow off other people so it hits the creatures. All in all, this video has been a very brief rundown of the Rogue and Archer classes. If you've never played Dark Ages before, I encourage you to try it out, at least a little. You might find something you enjoy, even if it's not hunting. If you have played Dark Ages before, but you've never made a rogue or an archer, try it out. You might enjoy it. Happy hunting, everybody!